Welcome back to the Fame Street, where the latest drama and hottest gossip never stop. To my loyal viewers, you know we always spill the tea and uncover every secret. And for my new viewers, a special welcome. You've just found the spot where every story is broken down with no detail left out. If you live for gossip, this is your new go-to place. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss what the Fame Street brings next. The atmosphere inside the courtroom shifted the moment Katt Williams opened his mouth. His hands shook, his eyes were swollen, and his voice cracked as he spoke. What came next caught everyone off guard. An apology. It wasn't limited to the judge or the people in the room. It was directed toward the public as a whole. But the apology carried more than regret. It was tied to a revelation that placed him directly in the middle of Reggie Carroll's troubling case. The obvious question followed. Why choose this moment? For years, Katt built his image around criticizing Hollywood, mocking those in power, and airing out secrets others avoided. So why now, in a packed courtroom, did he decide to admit to matters so heavy that even his closest associates reportedly tried to stop him from going further? Rumors swirled almost immediately. Some insiders whispered about a note, a piece of evidence suggesting Katt hadn't acted alone. Others speculated this was his last move to shield himself from deeper fallout if more influential figures became involved. Either way, it was clear this wasn't an ordinary celebrity drama. The weight of his words hinted at consequences that could dismantle reputations, careers, and possibly put lives at risk. Audiences were left wondering if Katt had chosen to put his own safety on the line to keep larger truths hidden, or if the years of pressure and controversy had finally broken him down. The courtroom stillness didn't last long. As soon as he finished, the press reacted in unison, pens flying, cameras tightening focus, reporters nearly leaning over the benches. Even the judge seemed unsettled, shifting as though uncertain of how to respond. For years, Katt had thrived on pointing fingers at the elite and brushing aside backlash. Yet at this moment, he openly admitted to knowledge and involvement that connected him to a man whose name had been whispered for months: Reggie Carroll. Carroll's story was already layered with mystery, but with Katt placing himself in the picture, speculation spread even wider. For those unfamiliar, Carroll wasn't just another face on the streets. His ties stretched from underground connections into corners of the industry. His fall was violent, filled with unanswered questions, and left behind more theories than confirmed facts. Now, with Katt acknowledging that he had been holding back information all along, the meaning of his past rants and stand-up bits seemed different. What once sounded like satire now felt more like warnings in plain sight. Outside of the courthouse, reactions spread instantly. Hashtags like #KattConfesses and #CourtroomStorm surfaced across platforms. Within minutes, clips of his shaky delivery were reposted, edited, and dissected before the court stenographer had even finished transcribing the session. The most unsettling part wasn't just his admission, it was his implication that others were present during the incident that sealed Carroll's fate. His words carried a tone of defiance, almost daring anyone powerful enough to silence him to try. It didn't take long before the discussion of the supposed letter gained traction. Courtroom chatter suggested investigators already held a handwritten note pointing toward a broader conspiracy. Allegedly, it connected Carroll's murder not only to street conflicts but also to figures with links to entertainment. The claim was that specific names were listed, names that could take the case from a local tragedy to an industry-shaking scandal. Meanwhile, online debates took on a life of their own. YouTube live streams gathered massive audiences analyzing whether Katt's statement was a deal, a breakdown, or a staged performance to shift attention elsewhere. On Twitter, opinions split. Some claimed he was finally exposing truths he'd long hinted at, while others believed he had been made the fall guy for something larger. Conspiracy threads went even further, suggesting the judge was a stand-in used to control the narrative. Far-fetched or not, the theories spread rapidly. The chaos only deepened when an audio clip appeared online. Said to be recorded from Katt's holding cell, the muffled voice sounded like his. In the clip, he muttered, "I'm not the only one with blood on my hands." Whether authentic or staged, The recording circulated quickly. Some listeners claimed a second, faint voice could be heard in the background saying, "Don't say my name." That brief phrase fueled more speculation, with many insisting Carol's death wasn't just a criminal act but part of something larger, possibly a cover-up. To them, Katt's confession wasn't just an apology. It was the first break in a bigger story. Adding to the weight of it all, reporters reminded the public that Carol's history was already complicated. His background was filled with connections and movements that painted a far more complex picture than a single courtroom confession could explain. The files tied to Reggie Carroll's case weren't clean. Whole sections were blacked out, names were scrubbed, and entire documents had been sealed away. So why was Katt suddenly putting himself in the middle of it all? Some close to the situation said he had been boxed in, pressured by evidence few even believed existed. Others insisted it wasn't pressure at all, but the weight of guilt that had been eating at him, building until it spilled out in the one place no one expected, the courtroom. But while people argued over motives, one detail stood out more than anything: the judge's reaction. Judges usually hold stone faces, never letting emotions slip. Yet when Katt said Carol's name, the mask cracked. For a brief second, fear flickered across his face. You didn't have to be a body language analyst to see it, and that tiny moment sparked even bigger questions. Was the judge compromised? Did this case stretch for deeper than anyone realized? Speculation lit up immediately. Some Twitter threads claimed the judge had previously worked at a law office connected to Carol's associates. Others swore that right after the hearing ended, certain files disappeared from the public record as if someone was erasing pieces of the puzzle. Coincidence? Or a sign that powerful hands were keeping the story contained? Meanwhile, whispers from the industry surfaced. One unnamed friend of Katt reportedly told TMZ, "This isn't about Reggie Carroll, it's about the machine." Katt's been carrying secrets that could wreck whole careers, and today was the day he broke. When pushed for proof, the source simply grinned and said, "Wait for the leaks." This is just the beginning. That hint alone was enough to send the internet spiraling. Within hours, Instagram feeds were crowded with so-called leaked papers. Some were obviously fake, but others were convincing enough to make people second-guess. One image showed Carol's name written beside the initials of well-known Hollywood figures. Another appeared to outline a money transfer that happened days before his death. No one could verify if any of it was authentic, but that didn't matter. They spread like wildfire. And while chaos played out online, Katt sat quietly in that courtroom, shaking his head like a man who knew the real storm was outside those walls, not inside. His apology felt less like surrender and more like a warning, a survival tactic from someone who knew the cost of silence was higher than the cost of speaking. By the following morning, the story was everywhere. Blogs, gossip pages, and social media timelines were flooded with his tear-streaked face, headlines screaming phrases like "Katt Williams confesses" and "Career ends in courtroom bombshell." Even late-night comedians who once mocked his outbursts were suddenly quoting him as though he had become some tragic prophet. But the noise wasn't coming from mainstream outlets. It was coming from the leaks. Someone on the inside seemed determined to keep feeding the fire. At first, it was just talk of that mysterious letter. But then screenshots started making rounds, claiming to show the note itself. One version listed Carol's name alongside cryptic initials Ms. GD, sending fans into overdrive guessing which celebrities those letters stood for. Names like Mona Scott and Jayden Dior trended for hours, even though there was no proof. But verification didn't matter. The internet didn't want facts, it wanted a story. And Katt had given them the juiciest setup possible. Then came another audio leak, this time supposedly from inside the courthouse during a recess. In the muffled clip, a voice sounding like Katt snapped, "You think I'm the only one who's going down? Follow the money. Check the recordings. Real or AI generated." It didn't matter, it spread instantly. TikTok detectives dissected every syllable, slowed the clip down, and argued about background noises as if solving the Zapruder film. Meanwhile, Carol's name was dragged back into the spotlight. Old case files resurfaced. Grainy photographs circulated showing him in the company of blurred-out figures. One shadowy outline became an obsession, with some insisting it looked like a chart-topping rapper while others argued it was a famous film director. Within 48 hours, hashtags like hashtag who was in the room and hashtag Carol's file were pulling in millions of views. But unlike the usual internet rabbit holes, this one carried an air of real danger. Posts started disappearing. Twitter accounts that pushed certain claims suddenly went dark. A detailed Reddit thread mapping Carol's connections was abruptly locked. Users claimed their accounts were shadow banned or their devices started acting strange after naming names. Paranoia grew, and with paranoia comes belief, especially when the internet decides someone powerful is trying to hide something. Inside the courtroom, Katt didn't make things easier. Instead of pulling back, he leaned further in. Witnesses swore he looked straight at the judge and said, "Do what you want. Throw me away. But you can't bury what's already out there." And then he smiled an unsettling grin that left people divided. Was he unraveling before their eyes? Or was he playing several moves ahead of everyone else in the room? That moment pushed celebrities to weigh in. A well-known R&R artist tweeted, "Katt wasn't lying all these years. Y'all just weren't ready to hear it." The tweet was deleted within minutes, but screenshots ensured it lived on. On the other side, a comedian who had once stirred with Katt went live on Instagram to call him paranoid and desperate, dismissing the whole ordeal as an act from a man who had finally lost his grip. The clash of opinions only pushed the fire higher. People weren't just following a courtroom case anymore, they were watching an entire industry split apart in real time. Journalists went digging into Reggie Carroll's records, but the details they uncovered didn't line up the way they should have. Reports were incomplete, files had been corrupted, and certain warrants were kept sealed without clear explanation. It looked as though someone had been quietly erasing Carroll's trail for years. Then, an underground blog claimed to have evidence the court hadn't even recognized, a financial document allegedly showing payments from a production company to Carroll just weeks before his death. That raised questions no one could ignore. Why would a legitimate business move money into his hands so close to the events that followed? Some said it hinted at blackmail, others thought it looked like payoff money, while a few suggested it was the trace of a cover-up that had gone wrong. Mainstream networks avoided that story, keeping their coverage centered on Katt Williams' behavior during the hearings. But online, the so-called evidence spread quickly. Some viewers called it fake, others believed it was the missing piece. The arguments only added more fuel to the chaos. Then the trial took a darker turn. During a short recess, the judge left the bench without warning. Officials told reporters he had fallen ill, but whispers inside the room painted a different picture. A folder containing sealed records had disappeared from his desk during that very break, and the court's security system showed a 5-minute gap in the footage. Officials said it was a technical fault, but few believed that explanation. Conspiracy theories poured across social media almost instantly. By nightfall, headlines had already shifted. Stories read, "Judge leaves mid-trial and evidence missing." As panic spreads, the coverage grew messy, and the narrative seemed to change by the hour. Katt sat back with a look that made some think he already knew more than he was saying. Outside the courtroom, the reaction was immediate. Online channels sprang up overnight claiming they had insider leaks. TikTok creators reenacted supposed details, and Twitter threads were built out like full investigations. The audience wasn't just following the story anymore. They were shaping it, adding new names, and twisting the timeline further with each post. Then came the moment that shifted everything. Inside the silent courtroom, Katt leaned forward toward the microphone, his face damp with sweat. His voice came out unsteady but heavy. "I can't carry this guilt anymore. Reggie didn't deserve it. None of this was supposed to happen." The words stunned the room. Reporters rushed to capture every line as the mood turned tense. Comedians who once filled the back rows with laughs sat motionless. This wasn't a performance. It was closer to confession, and everyone knew it. Soon after, more documents began to surface online. A memo, said to be from Carroll's family lawyer, described a so-called hush fund with links to hidden accounts. Screenshots of transfers labeled with vague consulting fees appeared on social media within hours. Hashtags like Justice for Jurage and Katt exposed trended worldwide. At the same time, those in the courthouse said Katt looked less like a man coming clean and more like someone worried about what might happen next. Some claimed they noticed unfamiliar men sitting in the back rows, watching closely, their presence raising quiet concerns about his safety. Social media kept the momentum. Instagram Reels looped his words with dramatic edits. TikTok creators acted out his statement with staged tears and recreated scenes. YouTube commentators dissected his delivery frame by frame, analyzing every pause as if it held another clue. And then prosecutors revealed new evidence. A nightclub surveillance video, long thought to be missing, had resurfaced. The footage, though grainy, showed Reggie and Katt locked in an argument by the VIP section. You couldn't hear what was said, but the gestures told their own story, pushing, pointing, and clear frustration. Just before the video cut off, Reggie mouthed something toward Katt. Online lip readers claimed it looked like the phrase, "You'll regret this." For some, that was a coincidence. For others, it was the missing piece they'd been waiting for. Katt's defense team pushed back hard. They argued that he had been provoked, that parts of the story were being twisted against him, and that the trial was more about tearing down his reputation than proving facts. But outside the courtroom, the sides were already set. Protesters stood with signs demanding punishment, while others defended him as another entertainer caught in a system eager to break him down. The split grew harsher as the days passed. Inside, the judge looked worn, as though dragged into a spotlight he never wanted. But Katt didn't stop talking. His admissions became longer, stretching from reckless choices to poor influences around him. He spoke about people who pushed him toward deals and actions that had followed him to this very moment. The more he shared, the harder it became to separate confession from defense. Each word blurred the line between comedy and reality. He described an industry built on greed, deception, and survival at any cost. His words reached beyond Reggie Carroll, turning into a wider reflection of Hollywood's darker side. That's when the shift came. In a shaken voice, Katt said Reggie hadn't been a random victim at all. He claimed Reggie held information that threatened powerful people, and his death was less about personal disputes and more about keeping him quiet. Katt admitted he had been pressured and backed into a corner, forced into situations he couldn't escape. Suddenly, the trial wasn't just about one man's admission, but about a conspiracy stretching into entertainment's highest levels. The gallery reacted instantly. Some gasped, others laughed in disbelief, but no one could deny the case had grown beyond a single tragedy. Journalists scrambled to keep up as stories broke across platforms. Headlines read "Hollywood under pressure" and "Was Reggie Carroll silenced?" Behind the scenes, reports surfaced that federal agencies had started asking questions. Rumors claimed the FBI requested sealed documents tied to Reggie's business ties. Talk shows speculated about hidden money trails, possible laundering, and whether recordings of high-level conversations were locked away. The narrative no longer felt like routine reporting, it carried the weight of something larger. Through all the speculation, one image lingered. Katt Williams broke down, covering his face, apologizing directly to Reggie's family. He asked for forgiveness that some thought he could never truly earn. For a few, that moment felt genuine. For others, it came across as a performance from someone who had always known how to capture attention. Either way, the damage spread quickly. By the end of the day, rumors said Reggie's relatives were preparing a civil lawsuit worth millions. In industry circles, whispers grew louder that Katt's career had reached its end. Sponsors quietly cut ties overnight. A streaming platform reportedly placed one of his specials on hold. Even some of his longtime peers kept their distance, posting carefully worded statements that avoided mentioning his name while offering general thoughts and prayers. The silence from those closest to him said as much as any headline. Yet, the words that stayed with people weren't about contracts or lawsuits. They were his final statement before the court adjourned. "I never wanted this, but maybe the truth had to come out this way." And with that, a pause fell over everything. It wasn't just about Katt anymore. It was about what might follow. Could people look at him the same way after what he revealed? Was this the raw truth of someone finally breaking under guilt? Or Another performance shaped by the instincts of a comedian who always knew how to control a room. Hollywood has seen scandals before, but this one carried the sense that more could unravel if the threads were pulled further. If Reggie was silenced because of what he knew, then the story wasn't finished. That left the public divided. Some believed Katt's apology was genuine, a man stripped of pretense. Others saw it as a calculated move to soften whatever sentence awaited him. Opinions on Reggie's death also split. Was it simply a clash that turned tragic, or the surface of a much bigger story waiting to unfold? The debate wasn't ending, it was only beginning. Online, discussions grew heated, each side firm in their interpretation of the truth. And as new details threatened to emerge, people understood this case wasn't closing soon. The fallout had only just begun. More leaks were expected, backlash continued building, and the consequences rippled outward. For those following closely, the trial had turned into something larger than entertainment gossip. It was a slow-moving storm that could shake an entire industry. That wraps up today's scoop on the Fame Street.